Before we begin today, a brief content warning. One of the episodes we'll be discussing today is the Season 10 episode Babylon, which contains scenes of racism, Islamophobia, and terrorism. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to Things Are Getting Strange, an X-Files We Watch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And we have sad news.
We do. It's not good news to start off the show today.
Mark Snow has passed away.
Mark Snow, of course, is the composer of the X-Files theme and a lot of the background music from the show.
And both films.
And both films, yep.
And did some work on a video game as well, with someone else.
Yeah, it's a real shame. It was very sudden. It was only announced a couple of days ago.
Yeah, and he's had a quite sprawling career, not a lot of stuff we've seen, except for Ernest Saves Christmas.
Oh, really?
I did not know at all,
That's
no.
very random.
Yeah.
What a pity.
It is a very big shame. 68, I think he was. Okay, so we're at one of the episodes we never wanted to do.
Babylon.
So, directed and written by Chris Carter, thereby being entirely his fault. First broadcast on the 15th of February 2016. Guest stars, we have some weird ones here.
Okay.
Well, weird in the case of what's going to happen to them. So, Lauren Ambrose is Agent Liz Einstein. She will also show up in My Struggle 2 and My Struggle 3, and that's it.
Okay.
She's gonna get to season 11, but she's not gonna make it past there. We have seen her before in 6 Feet Under. She was also in Torchwood Miracle Day.
Oh, I hated Miracle Day.
And the slightly weird one of she was in The Darkness, the video game. But more so interesting, we've got Robbie Amell, who played Agent Kid Miller.
Okay.
So, as I said, oh, of course, you've seen him in The Babysitter.
Oh, he's the awesome one.
He's Max.
The jock.
Yes, he's the jock. Of course, when I saw
the highlight of the entire film.
Yeah. But also, and I'd forgotten this one because I think we watched it once and it was really boring. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City.
Oh god, who was he? He's
Chris
not Leon.
Redfield.
Oh.
He was also in A Series of Unfortunate Events and The Witcher. We made it into 3 episodes. And since we only got to episode 2 of The Witcher, God, he could be anywhere. Gary Chalk was Mad Dog, and I don't remember who the hell that is, but he's on the cast list. He did too much. Lot of animation work. But he was in The Fly 2.
Fair enough.
Freddy vs. Jason.
Okay, I've seen that.
Watchmen. Godzilla, the Bryan Cranston one.
Okay, we keep getting back to that.
Yeah, The Predator. Sonic the Hedgehog.
Fair enough.
It, the Tim Curry one. Reboot, the CGI cartoon thing.
Oh, wow.
And My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic.
So, please can you give us a synopsis for Babylon?
In Texas, a young Muslim man prays and goes about his daily routine. After driving to a motel to meet a friend, they then head over to an art gallery called Ziggurat for an art opening, which is later revealed to have been showcasing controversial depictions of Muhammad, considered offensive to Muslims. Prior to leaving the car, they hold hands and say a prayer and then walk into the gallery, which shortly after explodes. One of the men, now presumed to be a suicide bomber along with his friend, survives, but is incapacitated in a vegetative state. Meanwhile, other bombers are shown planning another attack. In Washington, Mulder and Scully meet Agents Einstein and Miller. Both younger counterparts to the agents, believer and skeptic, but Miller is more extreme. While Agents Miller and Einstein leave to solve the bombing in Texas, Mulder asks Einstein to meet up with him while Scully meets Miller in Texas. Mulder and Einstein's relationship starts off rocky due to Einstein's extreme skepticism. Scully and Miller get along, but they clash with bigoted Homeland Security agents who try to silence them. The agents try to find a way to communicate with the vegetative bomber. Miller, who had worked with the FBI in Iraq, tries to speak with him in Arabic, while Scully checks his EEG for any subconscious reaction. Arriving in Texas, Mulder comes up with an idea to communicate with the comatose bomber. Einstein gives Mulder psilocybin mushrooms, making Mulder high. He wanders into a rodeo-themed bar where he dances and passes out after seeing the Lone Gunmen amongst the crowd. In his dreams, Mulder is on a ship being beaten by the cigarette-smoking man. He sees the comatose man in his mother's arms. He speaks to Mulder in Arabic. Mulder wakes up in hospital and is scolded by Skinner. Einstein reveals that she had given Mulder a placebo, despite Mulder's objections to considering his powerful and profound experience. Mulder later spots the bomber's mother, hoping her presence would make him up. However, the man dies. Agent Miller asks Mulder about his dreams. After trying to remember, Mulder says Babil al-Funduk, which turns out to be the name of the hotel where the other bombers are hiding, Babylon Hotel. FBI SWAT agents arrive at that hotel and capture the bombers. Mulder later questions human nature and their beliefs, but then hears a loud sound of trumpets, suggesting it is the voice of God.
Thank you.
So, I've been thinking about this, and I think we're going to do this in 3 chunks.
Okay.
So, we're going to do, oh God, this episode is a horrible idea. Then we're going to do what Chris Carter was trying to do with the episode, and we're going to follow up with Chris Carter lied to us.
I like your headings. So, chapter 1.
Chapter 1.
My God.
Yeah. I do remember at the time, people were not happy with this episode. Understandably.
It got a lot of negative press in the time, I think largely because we've talked about how the X-Files has evolved since 9/11 in the past, and the fact that conspiracies have changed. They're not cute anymore, basically. And we've got to this stage now where, at the time this was made, and even today, to be fair, how huge the fear of terror attack on America is.
Yeah.
So, obviously, we've kind of moved on into our portraying Russians and Germans as the enemies, like in the golden age of cinema and all the rest, to now the enemy are Muslim.
Yes.
But these, I feel, are big themes, big ideas, controversial topics that are too big to be encapsulated in an X-Files episode.
Yeah, well, I'd go further than that. I'd say it's none of the X-Files' business to go into this area. I mean, this is real-world FBI stuff that the X-Files transparently has no time for.
It's the Simpsons joke again with... I
hardly think the FBI...
I hardly think the FBI is concerned about something like that.
Yeah. I can see the impulse to do it, and Chris Carter, at least from what we've seen, does seem to be left-leaning. It's still... You didn't have... No one forced you to do this, and I don't think you should have done it.
We've kind of seen the X-Files do things in this ballpark before. When you had ones like Kaddish, which focused on the treatment of the Hasidic Jewish community.
Yes.
And Fresh Bones, which was about the treatment of immigrants.
Yep.
And both times we kind of commented on the fact that the X-Files isn't really the place to tell these stories.
No.
I'm not saying we couldn't have blanket touched on this in the X-Files.
No.
I was thinking more when it shows the quite shocking suicide bombing at the start. If it appeared to be a suicide bombing, but it was actually something supernatural, you could move the thing more into the X-Files sort of theming.
Well, I was going to say, that's the thing that gets me about it, is we spend the entire episode outside of Mulder's hallucination, which I think was going to end up in category 3 for our discussion here anyway. None of this is remotely Mulder and Scully's bit.
It's more of a way to introduce our potential Mulder and Scully replacements.
Yeah, that's section 2. We're going to
section 2, okay.
We're focusing on, oh my God, why did you do this? It's not Mulder and Scully's wheelhouse at all. I mean, they have their justification for why they're involved in it. But it made me think a bit of the Pine Bluff variant, which I always remembered till the rewatch as being the Mundane X-Files episode. But then you watch the Pine Bluff variant and it's actually got weird, impossible virus stuff in it.
Yeah.
So there is a supernatural angle to it anyway.
It's a bit like Jump the Shark, it's quite a mundane episode, but it's about a supernatural implement of terror. Yeah.
And this one, we don't even have that as the start. I mean, they tried to with that whole thing about hearing the trumpets. Because the witnesses' reports said they heard trumpets.
That's actually a real phenomena. And it's one of these popularly brought up phenomena. It's a bit like the hum. Have you heard of the hum?
I think I've heard of the hum.
It's something that's reported around the world. It's even in areas of the UK where people, large swathes of the populace report that they can hear this hum that doesn't seem to have a cause. A low kind of decibel sound, like a monotonous humming. There's a similar phenomena which involves hearing this strange celestial sound, which some religious-minded people have believed that it's the kind of trumpets heralding the apocalypse as referenced in Revelation.
Well, I think that's what the episode is getting at, because given what happens in My Struggle 2, I always took the end of this episode as a prelude to what happens next.
I didn't really take as your synopsis said that hearing the trumpets was supposed to make us believe that God had been speaking to Mulder throughout the episode.
No, I didn't take that either. That was kind of a weird one.
I thought it was just an ominous kind of...
The end is coming.
Yeah.
Because we're going to get into it shortly, but My Struggle Part 2 is about the end of the world. For real this time. You can have an episode of The X-Files that seems mundane, but usually have a supernatural sting. I mean, we've criticised them a lot for things where the sting bears no resemblance to the explanation. Like Medusa is one that always frustrates me. The sting, how the sting is depicted, bears no resemblance to the later resolution of it.
Yeah.
But we don't even get that. We get just a very flat scene that could be, for want of a better explanation, in an episode of 24.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
There's nothing about this marked down as an X-Files episode at all. I mean, you could think you're actually watching the wrong series, right? If you turned it on and missed the introduction or something.
It was a very dramatic opening.
It was.
It just has no place being here.
No. This isn't what Mulder and Scully do.
The Mulder and Scully element of the story comes into the weird science later, and I will probably note that what Scully is trying to do isn't really weird science. It's a largely known phenomenon that you talk to people in codes because they can hear you long after external consciousness has ceased.
Yes. So, and then again, that fits more with Scully's way of doing things. This is like a plausible scientific thing.
Yeah. Mulder's, on the other hand, I've got notes.
I think Mulder's is, we can touch on, we're touching most of it. We're gonna leave the dancing to later. Dancing comes in the third bit. We go for.
So we can talk about Mulder and his plan to communicate with the spirit of a coma victim through taking psychotropic drugs.
Yeah, and it's. I don't know if this is insulting. It's not really meant to be insulting to fanfic writers, but this feels like fanfic. This is a plotline the X-Files itself wouldn't go for, but it's one where you can make a case for Mulder might get into this mindset to do.
The similar thing we've seen, I believe, would be Demons, where Mulder actually has the experimental kind of hypnosis done on himself.
Yeah.
To put himself in the right frame of mind.
And I think the communicating via the psychotropic things is so much of a long shot that I don't know why anyone counterbalances it.
It's especially the fact that we're not even suggesting that somebody with a connection to the guy in the coma is doing this. It's Mulder. So from a religious standpoint, he's got no connection to this person whatsoever. When he takes the drugs, he's not even in the vicinity of the person.
Exactly. It's even weirder when we get to the whole, it was a placebo. And I appreciate that the placebo effect is a weird phenomenon that no one quite understands how and why it works. And it can do miraculous things. At the same time, though, it just feels like such a stretch to basically imply that Mulder got high off the placebo effect, which I don't think you get with psychotropic drugs. You could probably delude yourself into thinking you've had a trip or something, but what he experiences is really quite gone.
I even did some research because I've never taken psychotropic drugs before, so I was curious what the effect of the particular thing Mulder took would be on him in the episode. And it's nowhere near as dramatic as portrayed. Generally, based on my research, and I'm going with this particular mushroom that Mulder said he'd taken, which I googled, it's supposed to be deemed, although it's still illegal in most places, as being a safer hallucinogen than something like LSD. Because one is, you don't have a high chance of having a bad trip from it. And two, even though with a high enough dose you can have visual hallucinations, usually, and it did say usually, you are still under no impression that they're hallucinations. You know it's not real. But the other thing is that this mushroom in particular used to be used a lot by indigenous people in North America because it is supposed to induce a feeling that it's bringing you close to God, essentially. Okay. It gives transcendental religious experiences where you feel like you have transcended your human body and you're communing with the spirits, which makes it very appropriate for what Mulder is trying to do in this episode. But I would still do the counterpoint of he doesn't use it in any controlled way. You think you would at least have to take it while sitting next to the guy.
To be completely fair, he swallows it while standing next to him. He just then immediately runs out the room.
Yeah, but that's not really how you have a transcendental experience concerning that person.
No. And to cut around the dancing portion of the episode, to go on to where he gets the revelation.
Yeah.
As you said, that scene is just baffling, really, because he's on a boat, Cancerman is whipping him. A song by Tom Waits is playing that you said just undermines everything.
I was just listening to the song to me. I was thinking, why the hell is this here? Because it sounds like a comedy number in the background. But that song where you can just hear in the background a guttural voice saying "Everybody row" over and over again.
It's an odd choice. I mean, presumably your justification is hallucination and everything else. But then it feels really odd to have the bomber and his mother in the Madonna pose.
When they're Muslim.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing? I mean, I can appreciate that maybe Mulder has more of a Christian upbringing. He probably does. He's not overly religious, but that'll be his central point experience of religion will be Christianity.
Yeah.
Or Catholicism, some derivation of that kind of thing.
Based on what we've seen about Mulder and him being kind of anti-organised religion in general, can't imagine he knows a lot about Islam.
No, yeah. So I understand where the Madonna imagery is coming from. At the same time, you probably shouldn't have done that. I understand what you're getting at, but don't.
I think it especially muddies, given that, admittedly the Bible says it too, but a lot of Muslim people have that belief about not creating images, particularly of Muhammad, but of basically anything because it promotes idolatry.
Yes.
So, therefore, to have this tableau that's all based around Christian imagery with two Muslim people in it just feels poor taste.
Yeah. It's such a weird decision, and I don't like it. It's also odd, though, they don't dwell on the fact that Mulder recognises the bomber's mother from his dream.
Yeah.
And no one actually sort of pokes at that bit of information, but he just drags her into the hospital.
I have a real problem with how they portray the Muslim characters in this episode as well, because I think other than the unnamed terrorists that get busted at the end, we see three predominantly. There's the guy who's hospitalised.
Yep.
His friend who blows himself up at the start.
Yep.
And Mom.
Yeah.
So our experiences of Muslim culture in this episode are two suicide bombers and a woman whose dialogue largely consists of her saying, "My boy's innocent, he would never do anything like this."
Yeah, despite the fact he definitely did.
Quite blatantly so, yeah.
Yeah.
Which isn't, a great portrayal that we want to get across here.
No. And it's just, if all the other stuff around it, like the dodgy, are they not Homeland Security people who apparently just want to murder the guy in a coma.
We never even questioned, really, or at least got to the bottom of who these guys are. Because they came in, refused to show ID, got very tetchy when Miller tried to film them, and then just were vaguely sinister in the background for most of the rest of the episode.
I'm still amazed you managed to run them off, because generally when they sort of come in to take over, you can't do anything.
Mm. And then there was also the really, really racist nurse. I think at the time this was presented, though, a lot of the terror was going on in the East.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much on American soil, other than the constant undercurrent of Islamophobia that has existed since 9/11.
Yeah.
Which, again, I will keep hammering this home of X-Files is not the place to tell this story.
No, I think that's the thing to cling on to is you didn't have to touch on this. You shouldn't have touched on it. We could have had literally anything in this spot.
Mm.
And I think we'd have liked things better. But if we haven't got much else to say about Islamophobia, I think we need to discuss what Chris Carter was trying to do here. Because we have a suspicion, and it's kind of borne out, but something went wrong. We can say definitively, by the time we get to season 11, the plan didn't work. So, we have to talk about Einstein and Miller, who, she's memorable, but turns out actually a highly regarded actress.
Oh, really?
She's a lot of stage stuff and won a lot of awards.
I feel she was wasted here, then.
Yes, well, I think she was fully direct, given she seemed to just be really, really annoyed the entire time. And Miller is bland. Again, it's odd, though, looking at the stuff we've seen him in, they do so much better. It's like, this is Chris Carter's fault again? He's made them like this?
See, the depiction of Einstein, I don't know why it kept coming to my head, but it was Kathy Griffin in Seinfeld.
Oh, I can see that.
Is how how it kept popping into my head. Where you've got this character who's showing the vainly veiled disdain the entire time.
Curious, because Kathy Griffin was, of course, in Fight Club.
Which was another episode which focused on doppelgangers.
Oh, that's a good point. So anyway, yeah, so in case it's not clear, and if you somehow missed us at the time, because I think we twigged very quickly what they were trying to do, is Einstein and Miller are really ham-handedly the next generation of Mulder and Scully. These are for X-Files 2, or whatever you're going to call the continuation.
So we have two younger FBI agents. Miller is the open-minded one. He's the guy who is very, very open to supernatural beliefs. Einstein is the red-headed skeptic who is also a scientist.
And extremely skeptical.
Mm.
It feels, after season 8 and 9, so weird that you didn't even try to do something different like Doggett and Reyes. You just said, screw it, we're just going to replace Mulder and Scully outright with two younger people who have the exactly same dynamic, and we're just going to let the series sail on with them instead.
We just stopped short of calling them, like, Sculder and Mulder.
Yes, it's only just a little bit more restrained.
Yeah, it could be scripting and directing. As you say, she's a highly regarded actress, but she just came across as being irritatingly hostile.
Yeah.
And Miller just came across as being really bland.
Yes.
There wasn't much to him.
No, and that's still why I find incredible that he was in The Babysitter and, like, our favourite character from The Babysitter, where he stole the film. It's then so odd to look at him and say, my God, how bland you are as Miller. But anyway, in case though you think we're grasping at straws with Einstein and Miller's role or intended role for future, you can't get away from the fact that, contrary to their beliefs, Scully contacts Miller with a way to reach the terrorist and hospital, while Mulder calls up Einstein. You've got the Mulder and Scully pairings with one young and one older. And Mulder should be talking to Miller and Scully should be talking to Einstein, because that makes more sense in terms of who they are. But we don't do that because we can't do that, because then we lose the dynamic. So we've got to keep our dynamic going. So, yeah, at some point, these two were going to be the new leads of the X-Files.
Yeah.
And we'll get to... we're going to have to look into when this went wrong, and I'm guessing it's somewhere between 10 and 11. Chris Carter was told, no, you can't.
Yeah.
You have to revert to the existing cast. You're not allowed to change them over. But yeah, and then you watch them and everything just sort of falls into place. And I think the real problem, because if this was like Darren Morgan or Vince Gilligan, Einstein and Miller would exist for a joke.
Yeah.
You'd have them show up and have them be the more extreme Mulder and Scully to make a point.
It's a bit like a real-world equivalent from when, back in Hollywood AD, you had Taya Leone and Gary Shandling.
Yeah, you'd use it to contrast them.
Yeah.
And here, no, they're just Mulder and Scully dialed to 11 and stripped of 11 seasons worth of character development.
Yeah.
And so you basically just, Einstein is just a nastier skeptic and Miller's just a more pliant believer.
Saying you're missing that backstory is kind of the point, though, because you're missing Mulder's drive. Miller is Mulder without the drive.
I suppose that's it too. He doesn't have presumably Miller's Samantha thing was going to come in. We were going to find that out eventually, but without that, we've no idea what that was going to be.
And Einstein on the other side, it's Scully the skeptic from the early seasons, but kind of a smug version of it.
Yeah.
Where it's not just that she's pointing out the scientific flaws, she's lording over that she's smarter than everyone in the room.
Yeah, I think it's trying to reboot the X-Files, but having forgotten how you designed the characters the first time.
Yeah.
Because that's made me think of Shadows, which I still think was one of the really interesting early X-Files episodes. Because, not for the usual thing, but it's when they get called in to see the two bodies, which have the electrical discharge on them.
Yeah.
Scully is so interested in what's going on with them.
Yeah.
She's deeply fascinated. And she's not rolling her eyes, not dismissing things out of hand. She wants to know what's caused us to happen to the bodies.
Yeah.
And that gets lost in the episode, but that aspect of Scully is completely absent from Einstein.
Scully always operated on the principle of Occam's razor, though, as well. In the fact that it's not Scully trying to disprove everything, it's Scully will believe in the impossible if she's exhausted everything else, all the common answers.
If you show it to her, she will believe it.
And it's not, as you say, like we had with Einstein, the rolling the eyes and just dismissing out of hand.
Yeah. It's like, I kind of would want to see how Einstein would have coped with the Invisible Man in Je suis.
Or just give it on the basis of Doggett's baptism of fire, of Man-Bat.
Yeah. Or show Einstein the alien fetus in the cryogenic chamber or something. Just, how would she react to it? I mean, admittedly, that could be an interesting thing for the future, because if you continue this, you're going to have to throw into the supernatural eventually.
Yeah.
And we see a bit of that in My Struggle too, but we're going to have to get to that in a minute, because that's a whole other thing. But Einstein, what is she doing? Because the two stages to this, the one is she lets Mulder believe she's actually got him magic mushrooms.
Yes.
and then lies to him what she's given to him.
Yes.
This doesn't feel ethical doctoring to me at all. I mean, I know she's covering herself so she doesn't get in trouble for giving them psychotropic drugs. I'm pretty sure that if you lie to someone about that you're not giving them what they think they're giving, that's also probably frowned upon at the very least.
All she had to do was say no and go and report it to Skinner.
Yeah, she didn't have to do anything.
Mr. Skinner, Mulder's asked me for hallucinogenic drugs again. Yeah.
I'm not doing it.
But also, the drugs that Mulder are asking for, I believe, are illegal in most places. They are, like, Class 1 drugs.
Yeah.
So I think just asking for them, he's in a government position. He could get in a lot of trouble for this.
Yeah.
More trouble than he actually gets in, where it's the Mulder, don't do it again sort of response.
The other part of this, I feel, is that it's made more the contrast to Mulder and Einstein. Because I think the problem with Miller and Scully is there's not a lot to say because it's the Scully show with Miller being an assistant. And he, again, your attention falls off Miller so fast. I mean, he should be slightly more interesting given he speaks Arabic and he has some background in this area, but who cares?
The interesting things about Miller do come in right at the end, when you discover he speaks Arabic because he was a frontline, he was a soldier in Iraq. And then, essentially, he saves the day because he's the one who can translate Mulder's message at the end.
But it feels a lot like you've written yourself into a corner and you need to get out fast.
It's one of the, I've heard this phrase, but it's a language I don't speak. Conveniently, I speak that one language.
Yeah, but then Mulder and Einstein contrasting with each other is, rather than letting Einstein get on a plane to Texas where she's meant to be doing her job with Miller, Mulder calls her back to the X-Files office, sits her down, and goes on a long rambling spiel about psychotropic drugs and communication via narcotics.
Yeah.
And she keeps protesting it, but then lets him lead her through this meandering thing until eventually she does leave. And then she's jealous of Miller, apparently, and that's why she says okay to Mulder.
I also feel Mulder goes on that long rambling diatribe, but he could harken back to his own experience. I know we've kind of tried to forget that we had 6 seasons, but go back to the Blessing Way, where Mulder actually took part in a Blessing Way ceremony.
That's true.
So you could have a link back as Mulder knows that these kind of psychotropics can give you this out-of-body experience and things like that.
Yeah. There were ways of actually selling this to Einstein in a different way than just, here are some books that claim that this will work.
I've done this before, I know what I'm doing. That sort of thing.
But just to focus back on that, Einstein being jealous of Miller. What the hell is going on?
I don't know.
It's such a weird thing to pull. They're kind of entwined in the episode, but then again, I think you could have cut them out and you wouldn't actually lose much. They're not really important. Other than we feel they're there to do something else, which they will not do.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have anything else for Einstein and Miller, or do we get to Chris Carter lied to us?
Only to say, I understand also the pairings of pairing up the male character with the female character and the skeptic with the believer. But wouldn't it have made more sense for, like, Mulder to try and convince Miller to his way of speaking, given he's open-minded, while Scully discusses science with Einstein?
Exactly. The only reason they don't is to, as you said, to maintain the dynamic.
And because Mulder needs a medical doctor.
Yeah, and we also need to do a handover.
Yeah.
Mulder has to hand over to Einstein, Scully has to hand over to Miller.
But you'd think they'd hand off to the character that's designed from them. So, like, believer hands off to believer.
They're trying to do things succinctly though, because that's why you've got the male-female pairings as well. They're trying to do a lot in this episode to set up for whatever the plan was.
Yeah.
But okay, Chris Carter lied to us, and I remember though because we were quite excited in the run-up to this episode
because they announced the Lone Gunmen would be returning,
and it went around on Twitter. I'm pretty sure they put a photo of them in the club on Twitter.
Yes, there was a leaked photo of them all just with cowboy hats on.
Yeah, and it was a case of the Lone Gunmen back. So we have to harken back now to the season 10 comic.
Yes.
Because I think we alluded to it before, we never got into it, but the season 10 comic does the kind of thing we have said we wouldn't mind too much, which is just the Lone Gunmen are fine. They're alive. They're in hiding.
See, I maintained after their death that I would totally buy them coming back. And when questioned about how they didn't die, just saying, oh, is that how you remember it? You know, in the grassy knoll sort of sense. The Rashomon them back in, essentially. Yeah. And I was overjoyed when I got the season 10 comic, and there is just a sequence that reveals that essentially they faked their own deaths and are now working for the government.
My only criticism of it reading it more recently was, it's really nice to see them come back, and I like that. But why do you make Mulder dig up your grave to uncover the secret entrance when clearly you have a different way of getting in and out? Because you're not bursting out of the grave in Arlington Cemetery every time you need to go out to the open air, are you?
Yeah, but it's a lot more fun.
It's a lot more fun, yes.
Do this just to mess with Mulder one last time?
Anyway, so we were enthusiastic going into Babylon. I think we knew, because obviously we was like a few hours out because of broadcast times, but we knew the rumblings were not great about Babylon, but it's a case of, okay, so the episode has been well received, but the Lone Gunmen are in it. Hooray. And I don't think we counted the seconds that are on screen, but it's under 20?
In a montage.
In a montage of Mulder completely high on nothing, with Skinner and Lone Gunmen in a club in Texas.
Line dancing.
And that was it. And you found out, and I kind of knew from Obscurus Looper's podcast on this episode as well, that while it's fine to easy to get hold of Frohike, Byers isn't too problematic, Skinner you have to hand anyway, Langley was a problem.
Yes, after the season 9 of The X-Files, Dean Haglund moved to Australia for a short time and completely lost contact with everyone else. So they wanted them for this episode, but weren't sure up until the last if they could really do it, just because nobody could get Langley and there was no point in having two of the Lone Gunmen.
Yeah.
Eventually they did manage to get him via Bruce Harwood, who managed to speak to him at a convention and notify him, which is how they got Langley back. And indeed even had to make him a custom wig because he cut all his hair short in the meantime and things like that.
And it's that okay, so it's nice to have Lone Gunmen in the cameo, and you got him back from Australia for this for nothing.
20 seconds.
20 seconds of footage.
We even said, looking at it, we had to rewind it because you didn't spot Byers.
No,
it's that fast.
Yeah, and he's sort of aged less gracefully than the other two.
Mm.
It wasn't as recognisable.
But it gives you an impression of how fast this cameo is. Just think of the fact that we got to the end of it and Nick said, wait, where was Byers? And we had to go back and find him.
On the one hand, I appreciate that you can't, when you're sort of trying to drum up interest for an episode, you can't go on Twitter and say, hey, the Lone Gunmen are in it, but you may blink and miss it.
Yeah.
At the same time, the implication was that they were going to be in the episode proper and do something, not just be a background gag.
It's even less than their cameo in The Truth, where at least they got a speaking role as Mulder's kind of spirit guides.
Yeah, they got something to do in The Truth. And like we said, we wouldn't have minded, I don't think most fans would have minded if they, they had faked their death somehow. That the end of Jump the Shark was not the true end. But no, we have to adhere to Jump the Shark for some reason.
Yeah.
That just, it was a sour episode to begin with. That was just an additional sour note of, that was it. We've been waiting for this, and that was what you gave us.
Yeah.
And it's completely pointless. And also more to the point is, all the club footage gets increasingly creepy or voyeuristic, we could say.
It starts off pretty tame. The entire tripping sequence starts off a bit like Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's what I said at the time.
With Mulder kind of strutting through the hospital giving people finger guns.
And the fact that everyone around him looks bemused and confused and kind of horrified. And it's like, yeah, that's very true to life. But I think that's how Spider-Man 3 did it.
There is actually a really neat comment from Skinner at the end where he talks about all those kind of terrified housewives, inferring the fact that Mulder's vision of reality is nowhere near what was actually going on around him at the time.
Yeah, which I'm not surprised about, but...
But yeah, and then in the sequence at the kind of... What do we call it? Western bar?
Line dancing club or something.
Line dancing club thing. It starts off with just Mulder impressing people on the dance floor with his line dancing. And then you get to him on the VIP table with his kind of knuckle dusters on and all the rest of it.
Mushroom room in big letters.
Yeah, and then women wearing very little dancing on pool tables.
There's a lot of close-ups of chests and rear ends. And you said, okay, Mulder is a pervert. It's like, yes. The viewer this isn't meant to be viewed as Mulder's point of view per se, is it?
No.
And yet it's a very kind of very voyeuristic, very almost softcore porn kind of look to it.
It's how I imagine what it must be like in Hooters in America.
I think even that's got more restraint than this.
Yeah, but then we go straight from this to the boat on the river Styx and Mulder being whipped and the religious
Oh, no,
imagery.
You skipped out a phaser.
Oh, was there a phase?
It's because Mulder falls backwards onto the table from Dwayne Barry, where Einstein starts whipping him.
That's right. It's him on the kind of glass alien table with Einstein whipping him. And then we're on the boat crossing the river Styx.
And you want to go, Chris, I understand you're getting on in years and this may be a midlife crisis, but what are you doing?
I'm also not sure drug trips change like that, if you have this amazing euphoric experience and then it turns into the bad trip like that.
Yeah, and all we know is that Mulder left hospital and got to a club based on what Skinner says.
Yeah. Apparently walking down the middle of the highway to get to it based on the glimpses we see.
Yeah. Ugh. It's a frustrating episode.
And of course, we do note again the fact that he had taken a placebo pill.
Yeah. And somehow Einstein doesn't get in trouble for any of this. Well, neither does Mulder for that matter, which is also, I'm guessing, gets some cachet for having foiled the other bombing.
I will give the credit. We haven't really said we've been lampooning the placebo pill. The whole point is supposed to be, much like you can convince yourself that you're well with a placebo, Mulder has convinced himself that he is going to have this experience, and therefore he has this experience. It's mind over matter, but it's in a spiritual sense, like the spiritual essence over matter more so. And it's an interesting concept. It's just completely squandered in just this little wrap-up here.
Yes. Well, also you've made me realise that, of course, we've neglected the explanation for how Mulder pulled this off, which is, biogenesis, you've got Tunguska, there's a whole load of mechanisms that Mulder has gone through where he could have psychically entered this guy's mind.
Yeah.
Even, we can go back to Conduit, because Conduit made that whole thing of, if you're in the presence of an abduction, weird stuff happens to you. And they never went anywhere with that with Mulder, but he definitely should have had the same experience.
We do note, though, because it is going to be a plot point in My Struggle as well, though, that Mulder has essentially been cured of all his alienness.
Yeah, about that.
Because that's how Scully treated him to prevent him from becoming a super soldier.
Yeah, which is one of those, well, we can get into the science of My Struggle 2 and how these things don't work how you think they work. Guys.
X-Files vaccines. Yeah.
Okay, but if we've got nothing else for Babylon, we should get on to the, wow, it's even, I don't even know.
I mean, how are we going to get worse from Babylon?
Yeah, and I think the thing is, Babylon was just a disappointment because it was the whole, this doesn't feel like an X-Files episode, and then you led me to believe the Lone Gunmen were coming back, and they aren't. And My Struggle just My Struggle 2, I was so angry at the end of it. So, My Struggle 2, directed by Chris Carter. Story by Anne Simon, Margaret Fearon, and Chris Carter. Those first two are doctors, I noticed on the credits. So I think they're basically here to do the science stuff, and teleplay by Chris Carter. So I think the science, he was there to make the science vaguely right, and Chris Carter's followed the rest of it. And first broadcast on the 22nd of February 2016. Guest stars, we've known all the rest of the people except for one, who is Julian Christopher, who played Dr. Isaac Griffiths, who I don't have the faintest idea who this was in the episode. He was in Star Trek Next Generation.
Okay.
And X-Men Last Stand,
Oh,
unfortunately.
right.
That's the third one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, would you like to tell us about My Struggle 2?
If I must.
You must, unfortunately.
Okay, as always, I'm vaguely ad-libbing based on Wikipedia. This episode is set roughly 6 weeks after the event of My Struggle, which was the season opener. Scully arrives at the FBI headquarters to find that Mulder is not there. He seems to have left in a hurry after watching an excerpt from Tad O'Malley's online news show, which appears to have been revived. Scully tells Skinner and Einstein that Mulder is missing, and meanwhile Mulder attempts to leave Washington, clearly unwell and badly injured. Meanwhile, Scully receives a phone call from O'Malley. He arrived at Mulder's house for a pre-arranged meeting and says he's found signs of a struggle. When we see it, it's more than signs. The house has basically been entirely trashed. O'Malley talks to Scully about his belief that alien DNA has been injected into every American citizen in order to facilitate a widespread outbreak of an illness called the Spartan virus. This virus is designed to strip humans of their immune systems and therefore spread all manner of diseases nationwide, things that wouldn't normally be fatal to humans but now very much are. Scully realises that this is true as she and Einstein note a sharp increase in the number of patients admitted to hospitals and triage centres across the country. Agent Miller finds a phone tracking app on Mulder's computer and learns that he is in a place called Spartanburg in South Carolina. He leaves Washington in order to track him down, while Einstein and Scully discuss what's going on in the hospitals. While they're having this conversation, Scully receives a phone call which turns out to be from Monica Reyes, who asks her to meet. She claims she knows how they can develop a vaccine. During the meeting, Reyes reveals that after the closure of X-Files, she was contacted by a brutally injured cigarette-smoking man who had somehow survived being blown up in New Mexico. The cigarette-smoking man offered to secure Reyes a place amongst the very few that were permitted to survive the end times, in exchange for her assistance in the colonization effort. Reyes decides to go along with this and departs the FBI shortly after to become the Cancer Man's aide. To Scully's horror, Reyes reveals that in the past 12 years she has learnt all about the coming apocalypse through assisting and looking after the cigarette-smoking man. She also reveals that Scully is going to survive the coming apocalypse due to her alien DNA, which was given to her through her abductions and experiments performed on her as she is one of the chosen elite. By isolating the abnormalities in Scully's DNA, Scully and Einstein create a vaccine. Scully realises that she is indeed protected from the contagion by alien genomes that remained in her after her experimentation. However, virtually everyone else has no alien DNA, and that makes them susceptible to the Spartan virus. In the meantime, Mulder finds the cigarette-smoking man who offers him a chance to survive the outbreak, but Mulder refuses. Mulder is then quickly found by Miller, and the Cancer Man allows them both to leave, returning to Washington in the hope of finding a cure by some other means. Interspersed with this, we see clips of O'Malley's show, which is going on through the chaos, and with O'Malley himself looking very ill. He tells the nation about Scully and the fact that she has informed him of the existence of a vaccine. Scully administers the vaccine to the first patient, the ailing Einstein, before travelling to where Mulder and Miller currently are on the 14th Street Bridge. She realises that Mulder is too badly ill to survive unless he also has a stem cell transplant. Miller asks them how this will be possible. Scully explains that William would be the perfect donor, but she has no idea where he is. As Scully and Miller begin to discuss Mulder's prognosis, Mulder starts to die. All of a sudden, a brilliant beam of light shines down from the sky onto the three of them as a triangle-shaped UFO descends and hovers over the top. The episode ends with Scully just looking into the lights of the spacecraft, shining down onto her and her partners.
Da-da-da. Thank you. As I said to a friend of mine when trying to describe the latest X-Files, my response to that was, please bring me Chris Carter's head. I understand to a point, but also he should know better. Because this is what they tried to do with Lone Gunmen, and that didn't work. The fact it does work for this is no matter, because My Struggle 3 is next week. We'll worry about how they follow this up. Also, 23 times they say alien DNA in this episode.
At least 7 of them were before the credits as well.
It was just, if I'd tried to actually just saying DNA, it would have been even higher, but it's just, ugh. I don't even know where to start with this one.
The beginning?
I can start at the beginning. Oh, no. Start with my theory. So, one of the things that bugged us, I think, forever was, Reyes, it's lovely to see you. The hell are you doing allied with the Cancer Man, who you never met? And my theory is this was meant to be Diana Fowley, Mimi Rogers.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I've checked, and she's still alive. There's no reason why they couldn't have got her in, other than she possibly said no.
I've always maintained that it'd be easy to bring Diane Fowley back, given that she dies off screen.
Exactly. She's really easy to do. And also, given how she's phrased and integrated, I'm pretty sure it was meant to be her, because that then gives her longevity of she's been working for him behind the scenes for the last 12 years.
Yeah.
And even longer than that. And that fits quite nicely in, and they found out way too late that they couldn't get her in. And race doesn't make sense for this.
No.
It's just absolutely baffling, isn't it? Because I think the problem is that Fowley knew Cancer Man and worked with Cancer Man, and Reyes has never done it they've got no history. And they kind of try to get around that in the episode with, like, she knows who he is, but why?
Well, she would know who he is. There must be an X-File about him.
There probably is. It just feels really awkward and unnecessary. And Reyes becoming villain, well, okay. It's been a point of discussion for a while that there is a way you can say Reyes was always going to betray them. She was always going to be a bad guy in the end. They foreshadow it from her first appearance.
Yeah.
And it's purely the fact she's smoking.
Yeah.
If that was the intent, and I think it might have been originally when they brought her in, that's fine. I don't think it was true by the time they got to the end of season 8. I think that had been written out. But I think that maybe she was going to betray them at some point. Because she quit smoking very fast after that.
True, yeah. Can't have a good guy smoking those Morleys.
No, you cannot. But this turn feels iffy at best. And really poorly justified. And also, if a guy who'd just been blown up in a helicopter explosion, or some missile explosion, who looked really good for someone who had all his skin burned off just the previous day, came to you and said, I know who you are, Reyes. We've never met. I know your semi-co-workers. I've decided to give you a chance to survive the end of the world. You'd say, I'm leaving, old man. You're talking gibberish. Because what could he possibly say to her that make you believe that the end of the world was coming?
Especially the level of charisma you have to get her to believe this while you are crippled and hospitalised and...
Have no face.
Have no face, yeah. I've seen a lot of critics online that have pointed out the fact that Cancer Man shouldn't even be able to speak because of the stoma in his neck.
Yeah, well, that was true in the truth, though, wasn't it?
Yes, I never thought about it previously, but of course, if you've had a tracheotomy, you have to have... There is a way to speak. You can't speak well. You have air escaping from a point before it reaches your vocal cords, so you can't actually speak. But you said we've got 2 doctors, apparently, making
right.
sure this is accurate.
They weren't allowed that part of the script, apparently.
Oh, neither of them know what the word vaccine means.
Yeah, we'll get on to that. One of the problems is that Cancer Man's reveal to Mulder and Scully is, or even just Mulder, is done with a complete lack of theatrics.
Mm.
I mean, there's no he doesn't even react to the news he's alive. Because he should be pretty sure he's dead.
Yeah.
And it just feels like lackluster. And just trying to have a just dramatic ending. Mulder no longer being immune to the alien virus. I understand, as you said, Scully's cure of the super soldier is the explanation for this.
It's removed all of his alien DNA.
Yeah. At the same time, you want to go, really?
I would also like to head back to our 180 from the beginning, in which Scully said that everyone has alien junk DNA.
Oh, we don't believe that anymore. That's gone.
Now nobody has alien junk DNA.
Only some people have alien junk DNA. I suppose we have to talk about the science. And why is there a tension beat that takes about 5 minutes? The whole point is Scully did her DNA in My Struggle and found that she's got alien DNA. And she does it again for Einstein, and there's no alien DNA. And then Einstein, a bit later, says, oh, you didn't take a large enough sample, let's do it again. And there's the alien DNA. So why is this in here?
The episode was a bit short.
There's so much going on. There's too much going on in this episode. Why is this? It's frustrating. And as you said, we have our typical, we don't understand what the word vaccine means or what vaccines actually do.
I have a twofold complaint against this one, because I am so angry about the science and the plot of this episode. First of all, we have had 9 seasons of preparing ourselves for what the aliens intend. We have talked about this at length, about the connection between purity and the black oil and how we had to frantically retcon to turn the black oil into the alien virus that Purity Control was supposed to be vaccinating people to protect against. So to go back to what we had previously, it was an alien virus that would cause aliens to eventually gestate out people, not to be confused with a popular 70s science fiction movie that had a very similar stick to it. We also had the development of a vaccine that was a major plot point for at least the first 6 seasons, which is often called purity control in the episodes, but not always. But purity control was supposed to be what would be given to the chosen populace to make sure that the black oil virus did not kill them. At this point, when it would take place, and there was the whole thing about how the terror attack would take place on a public holiday to ensure the maximum amount of people got all that stuff.
Yeah. The implication was it was midsummer, so that you would be out camping or something.
And we also had the importance of the smallpox vaccines, which was more used to profile people and find the ideal people for their experiments, which is why they had the smallpox records on file, including Scully's, as like a Rolodex so they could find abductees. Instead, when people have been getting vaccines, they've been being injected with a kind of dormant virus called the Spartan, which is set to activate in every single person at the same time, because this is how science worked, due to something like chemtrails.
It was the chemtrails, or at least O'Malley claimed it was the chemtrails.
But let's point out the fact that all humans have different sizes, constitutions, and all the rest of it, and nothing would be that precise, activating at the same moment in every single person. But what the Spartan virus does then when it's activated is it immediately erodes your immune system, so you don't die of the Spartan virus, you die of whatever else you've caught. From those people in hospital we saw who had recently had an anthrax vaccine and therefore contracted full anthrax, to Mulder, who seems to have the flu.
It's AIDS++, basically.
AIDS++, yeah, or lupus or any other...
Yeah, immunodeficiency disease.
Yeah, apart from the fact it's activated in everyone at exactly the same time, because science... Science that hurts me. But then we've got the development of the vaccine. So, as you are aware, as I at least hope most viewers hold the importance of vaccinations, a vaccine is something you take where it builds an immunity to a disease before you catch it.
Yep.
So you have your smallpox vaccine, say, which means that if you are ever exposed to smallpox, you won't catch it. If you already had smallpox and somebody gave you the vaccine, it would do nothing, because it hasn't had that time to kind of infiltrate your immune system and create the antibodies necessary. So the only times, because I saw somebody arguing till they were blue in the face on Reddit on this, one of the few exceptions is the rabies vaccine, which you do take after you have been exposed to rabies. However, it has to be taken within a very short window before the disease has chance to actually incubate, which is why you only have, I think it's 36 hours after exposure to take it. So yeah, you're still taking it before the disease takes hold. Rabies is not an exception, and that's not how you can justify this person on Reddit. So yes, dear science advisors for the X-Files, your concept of vaccines angers me still to this day.
We both took the same history in high school.
Which was history of medicine, yeah.
And one of the early precepts of, at least the also more modern precepts of medicine is it's prevention is easier than cure.
Yes.
Which is very true, because actual cures are extremely difficult to do for diseases. It's easier to stop them in the first place.
Yes. If you want to read more of it as well, the history of vaccination is actually fascinating. Look into researching Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch. So it was a French researcher and a German researcher who had this fantastic rivalry, and they've created most of the vaccines that we use today just because they were constantly trying to one-up and be the person to create the most vaccines, which is actually super cool. But yeah, history of medicine is fascinating. This is not what we're seeing here. This is not how vaccines are developed.
No. And I think one of the other points on that one as well is, I remember penicillin in World War II. One of the big things was when they got the hang of penicillin, one of the problems they were having first in that time period was producing it was difficult. It was difficult to produce penicillin in large quantities to be useful. I refuse to believe that one sample from Scully's blood can be replicated that fast. One of the things that struck me on revisiting this episode, and it's kind of a problem with my struggle.
Yeah.
A thing that the comic doesn't really have is our reason for getting Mulder and Scully back into the X-Files is so flimsy when you think about it. Because it's Skinner contacts Scully and says, have you heard about this guy, Ted O'Malley, who does this conspiracy series on YouTube? Show it to Mulder. Skinner, what are you doing? There are hundreds of people like Ted O'Malley around. There was nothing distinguished him aside from being rich about why they should pay attention to him, was there?
No, not really.
And I was still shocked when he comes back into this episode, because it's like, I thought they killed you? It's only implied something bad, that your YouTube was gone, and the implication was you were dead.
He got better.
He very much got better, but it's such a weird thing to see him come back and be relevant again after 4 episodes of ignoring Ted O'Malley entirely. One thing you can say about this episode is we got there. This is Doomsday. The thing that the X-Files has been kind of hinting was coming up all the time. As you said, though, this was meant to involve bees and black oil and people gestating aliens inside themselves. That was what we were led to believe up until the Syndicate were burnt alive. And then everyone's meant to be turned into super soldiers because that's what Lucy Lawless is trying to do at the start of season 9.
Mm-hmm.
And now what we're doing is turning off everyone's immune systems to kill them all. And Cancer Man does have a very vague gesture at, this is climate change, this is the state of the world. Okay, we can see where you're coming from. I'm sure you have enough influence to do something more effective than killing most of the population. Because I'm left with the thing that everyone kind of seems to forget if you want to do this of, the planet's going to be unlivable afterwards, because there's going to be seas of rotting corpses everywhere. The flies are going to inherit the world. Why have you done this?
See, I was also thinking of it in terms, and I'm going to spoil an entire book series now, of Neil Shusterman's Ark of the Scythe. Trilogy of books, very popular, very good. But the series as a whole follows a world where there is no natural death. That death comes from an organisation called the Scythes, who essentially act as... They're normal humans, but they act like Grim Reapers, and they decide by lottery when a person's time is up. But in the climax of the books, essentially they return death to the world naturally so the Scythes would no longer be needed. But essentially it was starting a biological clock in people, so you will die at some point in your life of one of 12 illnesses and you won't know when. Or what's going to strike you. And so, it's brought back death to the world naturally and uncertainty uphold. But, it struck me as being slightly more realistic than this biological clock in which everybody is afflicted at the same time by this Pandora's box of illnesses.
Yeah. Scully is immune to this because of the deep backstory. But the series also refuses to engage with what the implications were at the time, given that Scully's abduction and what happened to her was always a very kind of weird route, and I'm guessing they're focusing on it because it ultimately was all government controlled. They never actually got around to answering the questions of, okay, Scully, you were abducted by the military on top of Skyline Mountain. They just never got around to, okay, so yeah, the military took you away to do whatever they did to you, because basically to shut you up, but then Cancer Man kind of just relented on that, and that whole thing was very bodged because of her pregnancy anyway. We know that in real life, Gillian Anderson threw the X-Files for a loop because her getting pregnant at that period of time, they needed to cover for it, and they didn't do it in the most graceful way.
No.
Some good episodes, but in the overall thing, it's a mess. But we never got around to, okay, so Scully was taken off Skyline Mountain, given to a Japanese scientist in a train car, who injected her with the chip.
And alien DNA, apparently.
And alien DNA. And did weird pregnancy-related stuff to her for reasons. Then, outside of you getting cancer because of taking the chip away, we kind of dropped... Why was the Japanese scientist doing... What were they doing? Because we never got to the bottom of it. Other than giving you alien DNA, which Series 10 has reframed as, yeah, none of those aliens you saw in the previous 9 series count.
No.
All the aliens have given Earth a wide birth because you hacked up one of their own after he crash landed and used his organs to do weird mad science.
Sure, why not?
Season 10 really is Chris Carter just regretted the 9 previous seasons and said, no, I'm going to restart.
I get the impression it's more we've talked about hopping on points before.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Is we wanted to make season 10 accessible to people who hadn't seen 9 seasons of lore previously.
And I think we said at the same time previously that I understand that impulse. At the same time, everyone else who's here because they watched the previous 9 series are going, what are you doing?
I know there's been a big hiatus, but very few people hop on season 10 of a series.
Yeah. Even if you try to hide that it's a 10th season by reverting the intro sequences back and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did the level best to hide that this is not a good popping on point, but given that this episode stuff for Scully, though, can't really make a lot of sense unless you've seen season 2 at the very least.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you've seen season 2, you also start knowing the stuff about purity and things like that,
Well,
which
yeah.
we're also not referencing anymore.
Yeah, and also...
It's select parts of season 2.
It is, and I'm still never going to let go of Fight the Future, the big cinematic film that cost a lot and was central to the old plot line. And we're just going to neglect that.
Well, yeah, we don't talk about the black oil anymore.
No, we don't. They did mention something. I need to remember Cancerman or someone said to me about Mulder saving the world again in this episode.
Yeah.
Someone said something about it. I said to you earlier that Mulder's only, if he ever saved the world, and the jury's out on that, he did so entirely by accident while trying to save Scully by injecting the vaccine into the systems of a UFO. He didn't know he was on board.
Yep.
Because sending that ship off Earth is the only material thing Mulder has ever managed to do, because the other one you'd point to would be the rebel, the captured rebel, who they want to make sure that the bounty doesn't get to.
Yeah.
And his rescue had nothing to do with Mulder, ultimately. He just happened to be in the room in the truck at the time.
Arguably, he also cocks up whatever the hell they're doing on that oil rig with Doggett. But
arguably, it's not clear what that was doing.
It's not clear what exactly they were doing.
No. Is Chris Carter embarrassed by the X-Files?
That's a very good question.
I don't, because I made that point of, I'm not, the only way I can justify season 10 is if Mulder interpolated everything off screen in the previous 9 seasons, which is a hell of a thing to try and convince anyone of, and I don't think it helps a new audience or an old audience.
No.
Miller, I don't care about Miller. Do we care about Miller? What do we say about Miller other than he just ferries Mulder around in a car?
I don't think we really know what to do with him. He does figure out where Mulder's gone.
He does, but it feels like one of those, why didn't Scully try that first? Because he should know him better.
Mm. I love these apps. One of my co-workers has one, so he knows where his kids are at any time. But essentially, we got one stuck to Mulder as well, just so we know exactly where he's run off to this week. It's about time we got to the level of technology where we know where Mulder's sodded off. Oh, he's in Hong Kong today.
It's true. But what is going on? Because I know they want to have the dramatic thing of, oh, there's been a confrontation at Mulder's house.
Mm.
But it's like, the guy who comes to say, come talk to Cancerman, just pulls a gun on him. It's like, no, you walk up to the door, you knock on it. When Mulder answers, you then say, an old friend wants to see you, for example. You don't walk in with a gun drawn and then get in a protracted fight scene.
Yes. I was wondering how this message was supposed to be delivered.
And then, the only reason I can think of Miller showing up is Mulder and Scully, we're going to let Mulder and Scully go. We're hanging on to Cancerman. We want William B. Davis around, so we need to set up an animosity. Even though Miller and Cancerman don't have even the start of a relationship.
Makes sense. But I guess if we'd spent more time building Mulder as Miller's mentor, and then Cancerman killed him off.
Yeah. That would have been...
Then you've got a vendetta.
Yes. Again, yeah, I can see that being a longer season you could have done this.
Mm.
But we don't have the time for that either. Einstein doesn't get away from your criticism either of just the fact she's smugly skeptical.
She's a bit more amenable in this episode, but then again, she's paired up with Scully in this episode.
Who does prove definitively that she does have weird DNA in her.
There is a great line in the episode, though, and I really wish I'd written it down verbatim, where Scully pulls one over on Einstein saying, well, I am a scientist. It's like, Scully, so's she.
Yeah.
Oh, you also have my favourite Scully Doctor moment of all time, I think, in this episode, where she takes one look at Mulder and says he needs an injection of stem cells.
Oh, God, yeah.
It's like, one is, I don't think stem cells work quite that way, Scully, and two, you've diagnosed this by looking at him.
Yeah, there was a point when medical drama sci-fi things, stem cells were the cure-all.
Yeah.
You just needed some stem cells and you'd be fine.
Just a shot of them.
And that'd be too fine. But then it's the whole, it has to be William. It's like, really? Not Cancerman, who also theoretically qualifies in exactly the same way?
Yeah, arguably. Mind you, Mulder knows Cancerman's the father. Who has he told Scully?
I don't know. You'd think it'd have come up in the intervening 12 years sometime.
Mm.
But we know where Cancerman is, because they make a big thing of, we don't know where William is. You left the other guy in North Carolina.
Yeah.
He's right over there. But the only way I can read the end of this episode is William's in that ship.
He's got a cool new ride.
He's got a cool new ride. At the same time, though, the last time we saw a ship like that, it blew up Sveta.
True, yep.
Admittedly, this one doesn't do the green laser; it just uses the white light cone. But what a way to end your possibly last chance at the X-Files. He got another one. I would not have made that bet.
Easily, you could have ended here with your finale being Mulder dying and a UFO hovering over Scully.
Yeah, that's how we do end. They might not have been in season 11, and this could be how you ended the X-Files. Everyone's going, what? What happens? Is the world doomed? Does Cancer Man win? I think I struggle to talk about this episode because a lot happens, and at the same time, nothing happens.
Yeah. A lot of it is Scully and Einstein talking about how they can make a vaccine while Mulder is driving.
Yeah, and then Miller drives after him, and Tadamali just keeps on saying conspiracy stuff. Oh boy, that's some conspiracy stuff there.
He's also kind of helpful, but not. There's the bit where he's on the screen saying, "Oh, a friend of mine has made a vaccine. That's great. Where can we get it?"
Yeah, but come on, man. You have to do a bit more than this.
Use your platform. Please help.
Do we have much else for this episode? Because we can do a condensed roundup, given we've only got 6 episodes to work with here. We're not going to do best or worst.
I didn't do best.
What
was your favourite episode that was not Mulder and Scully meet the were-monster?
Best of bad choice is going to have to be Founders Mutation with a special mention for half of Home Again.
Yeah, I give it to Founders Mutation as well, if I'm not counting Were-Monster, which is obviously the best episode of the season.
Unfortunately.
Okay, worst episode.
My Struggle 2.
Babylon.
Oh, I suppose, yeah.
I've often tried to kind of rewrite episodes in my head and thinking, okay, if I'd done it, I would have done X to make it better. I can't do it with Babylon.
No, I think it's just scrap it and start again.
It's because the subject matter that's objectionable runs through the entire thing. You can't remove it without changing the entire plot. But yeah, I don't rate Babylon.
No, I don't like it much either.
Do you have a best Gribbly then?
You mean, okay, as
other than
a
Guy
Man, yeah, we have to, the caveat here. Oof. No, Bandit-Nosed Man would, Band-Aid Nose Man at least was an effective monster. He's got a stupid name.
Fun. There was some of the black comedy in Band-Aid Nose Man, like him putting the woman through the trash compactor.
Yeah, he's got a worst possible name you could give him, but he is actually an effective monster. I'll give you that. Okay, so next week, season 11.
The final season.
The final season, for now. We can't hold much hope that this is going to be the end of it, other than we are starting to lose people in the X-Files. We've lost Kim Manners, lost Mark Snow now. I think if David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson passes away, they'll stop.
Or possibly Carter himself.
They will have to hold everything or reboot it entirely. You can't keep going anymore. But final season, and we get it. My Struggle 3 is the resolution of the cliffhanger that My Struggle 2 left out on.
Oh god, have we reached Silicon Heaven?
We've reached Silicon Heaven. We have to talk about Silicon Heaven at long last. You've been going on about it for so long, we actually have to deal with Silicon Heaven.
It's where the calculators go.
Yes. In the meantime, if you would like to defend My Struggle 2, I don't know.
I'll defend season 10 on the whole, because it's not averaged out as very good.
No. Our email address is thingsagatingstrange42@gmail.com.
You can also find us on social media and hook me up if you'd like me to promote anything X-Files related at the start of the show. We are on Twitter and Tumblr at GetStrange42, on Mastodon at GetStrange42 at universedon.com, and on Facebook, where you can find us by searching for Things, a Getting Strange and X-Files Rewatch podcast. Also, if you're not sick of my voice right now, I stream live on Twitch TV under the name AdverseCamber42, Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 PM GMT and Saturdays at 5 PM GMT. I'm currently playing Okami and Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, both on PlayStation 4.
Our theme music is envisioned by Kevin MacLeod. You can find that on Computech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, please remember, deny everything.